Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shit Loretta Knows. I'm sorry, I know I'm 8 minutes late. I had a mix-up with a client. We got our wires crossed, and she thought it was an hour-long story, and then we ended up running late. So here I am, and today we are talking about purpose and how it affects your renal and adrenal system. So let's start off with, you've got two types of purpose. You have what is called your primary purpose. Your primary purpose is what you are doing right here and now. It's who you are right here and now. That's your primary purpose. People very often get confused and think that purpose is something that you do. It's like a work that you do in the world, or it's a job that you have. And yes, your purpose and your job can be connected, but very often they're not. So your primary purpose is to be who you are, the fullest expression of who you are, not necessarily the current expression of who you are, but the fullest expression of who you are. And by that I mean knowing what your awesome and your awful is, all right? Being able to integrate all parts of yourself, really knowing yourself, understanding what the unconscious drives are that actually that drive your compulsive behaviors and your choices unconsciously, and that end up creating what you have. So the more you know yourself, the more you have insights into how it is that you operate, the closer you are to actualizing your purpose, which is not being the best expression of you. It's not being the kind without the cruel expression of you. It's being the most complete expression of who you are. Your secondary purpose is how you bring that into the world. And so that can be in any way. You can bring it into the world in terms of your family. You can do it in terms of your family, your career, your friends. In fact, we all do it in almost all areas of our lives. So the idea that, you need a purpose which is linked directly to the work that you do in the world or a calling that you have, it can be, but it needn't be. All right? Okay. So now that we have just defined purpose, I want to talk about your kidney. So those of you who follow me and who know my work know that I'm not only talking about the physical body, right? So in Oriental medicine, traditional Chinese medicine and Japanese medicine and Indian medicine, all the medicines that, or forms of medicine that come from the East that are different from Western medicines, essentially believe that we have the physical organ and we have an energetic blueprint. And even in Western medicine now, we're starting to see that. So when you go and have an ECG, you are measuring the energy blueprint of your heart function. When you have an EEG, you're measuring the energy blueprint of your brain function. So just because we don't have machines that measure the energy blueprint of our liver function doesn't mean that it doesn't have an energy blueprint. So when I'm talking about the organs, I'm not just talking about the physical organ, I'm talking about the organ and its energy blueprint. So in Chinese medicine, they say that our life force is called qi. So I think of that as the spirit, all right? In Japanese medicine, they call it ki. In Indian medicine, they call it prana. It's that animating principle, all right? In homeopathy, they call it the vital force. It's that thing that is the difference between being alive and not being alive. So, it's that part of your soul that is expressing itself. It's your spirit. And so in Chinese medicine, the kidney is the warehouse or the reservoir of your life force. And so they say you're born with a certain amount of life force, number of breaths. And, when you've reached the number of breaths that you have in your reservoir, then you move on and you transition into the next realm. And so the kidney is the warehouse, the reservoir of your qi. Your kidney organ function energy, the energy of your kidney, governs and controls the health of all your hormones in your body. Specifically, your adrenal glands and the hormones that your adrenal glands produce. Now, your adrenal glands produce a range of hormones. They produce your androgenic hormones, which are the more male kind of hormones. They produce primarily cortisol in response to stress. And then you have a couple of other hormones that it also produces, very much associated with stress regulation. And your adrenal glands are they're the only gland in your body, endocrine gland, that is directly stimulated via your nervous system. And your sympathetic nervous system stimulates your adrenal glands. Now, your sympathetic nervous system is the one that makes you alert. Your sympathetic nervous system is allowing you to actually listen to what I'm saying and take it in, right? It's actually making you awake and alert. Your sympathetic nervous system is active. It's alert. It's about focus. It's about concentration. It's about taking in information, right? Your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the other arm of your autonomic nervous system, is about digesting and assimilating and relaxing and regulating. And so they work together. If you only had your parasympathetic nervous system active, you would lie like without being able to move, talk, do anything inertly. If you didn't have a parasympathetic nervous system and you only had a sympathetic nervous system, you would be like a hamster on speed and you wouldn't be able to digest or reproduce or relax. So you need the two of them to work in harmony. Now, your adrenal glands are directly innervated by your sympathetic nervous system, which means that when your sympathetic nervous system is overactive, and this incidentally represents, the masculine aspect, and the parasympathetic nervous system represents the feminine aspect of your autonomic nervous system. When that masculine is too dominant, when it's too active, you produce a lot of cortisol. Cortisol makes your blood sugar go up. You produce a lot of insulin. And a lot of the sort of menopausal belly fat, waistline, weight gain, blah, 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 that stuff is linked very often to cortisol and insulin. And the health of your adrenals is governed by the health of your kidneys. So your kidney organ function energy, the coupled emotion is fear. Your kidney, from an energy point of view, is governed and controlled by fear, survival fear. Do you have enough time? Do you have enough health? Do you have enough money? Are you going to survive? What is going to keep you alive? Those primal survival fears are actually the ones that impact our kidneys most specifically. Now, if you think about this, as you get older, we tend to harden, become less flexible in our minds, in our thoughts, in our perceptions, in our bodies. And we also are getting closer and closer to death, right? And there are very few people that aren't somewhat frightened of death. I mean, who really knows what's going to happen? So, it's the unknown. We're going into the great unknown, and you're going in there all on your own. And so the older you get, the more real death is, because it's getting closer and closer. So those survival fears become stronger. Also, the older we get, the more we worry about whether our money's going to run out. The older we get, the more we become a target for crime, for example, because we can't defend ourselves effectively. The older we get, the less life force we have. So our kidney chi starts becoming depleted. And what happens in the physical body is we become sclerosed. We start hardening. We become less flexible. The kidneys govern and control the health of the muscles. So if your kidney organ function energy starts depleting, then you have depletion of your muscles. And there's a condition called sarcopenia, which is essentially losing muscle mass. It's normal in aging. It's a normal part of aging. And this is why doing weight-bearing exercise or weightlifting is so important, because as we age, we lose muscle mass and it becomes more difficult for us to actually gain muscle mass. So that's just as an aside. So the more we are living our lives from a place of trying to combat our fears, and less from a place of trying to express what our spirit is longing to express in the world, what we're here to actually do and be, and the less joy and creativity we have in our life, the more fear we have in our life, the more we deplete that kidney chi. And the more depleted it becomes, the more fearful we become. And so when we are purposeful, when we feel as if we are contributing to life in whichever way, it doesn't have to be through work, it can be anywhere, it can be through creating beautiful art, it can be through traveling around the world and actually putting your money into the economy of different countries. It can be a charitable organization, but it doesn't have to be, all right? It's anything that you are actually contributing to, and very often there is a service component to it, right? When you feel like you are being of service, you are still capable of rendering some sort of service in the world. That's when you are more aligned with your spirit. And when you are more aligned with your spirit, you create from a place of love and joy. It's like, I would love to create X. Not, oh my God, I better start making money because I'm not going to run out of money and I'm going to end up being on the street and I'm going to end up being homeless and I'm going to end up, being a welfare case. That's creating money from a place of fear. But When you focus on what is it that you would love to do, would you love to travel? Would you love to, I don't know, would you love to lie on the beach? Do you want to play with your grandchildren? Do you want to play with your great-grandchildren? Do you want to leave a legacy in terms of your work? Do you want to share your wisdom with the world? What would you love to do? Can you hear? None of those things are about, oh my God, I better make money because my money's going to run out when I get old. That's what I mean by purposeful. And the more you are aligned with what your soul is longing to express in this life, the more effectively your adrenal glands and your kidney works, physically and energetically, okay? So what happens is the fear, those survival fears, remember I said your adrenal glands are innervated by your sympathetic nervous system. So your survival fears, the fear, activates your sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze when it's at its most extreme, activates your adrenals, and you produce tons and tons of cortisol. Eventually, your adrenals go, too much, can no longer do this. And as a consequence of that, your cortisol levels start dropping. And now you start freaking out even more. Now, cortisol in itself it's supposed to be an anti-inflammatory hormone. But the more cortisol you produce in the long term, when you are regulating this chronic stress that you have, because on some level, you actually don't feel fulfilled. This is not about happiness. This is about fulfillment. You don't feel inspired or fulfilled in any way. So the more cortisol you produce, the more inflammation you initially the cortisol calms the inflammation down, but it also produces more insulin, and insulin is an inflammatory hormone. And chronic inflammation is the cause of almost all chronic diseases: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, coronary artery disease. So in other words, heart attacks, strokes, dementia, neurodegenerative disorders, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, those kind of things, right? Those things that, cancer. It's an inflammatory disease. That's a consequence of inflammation. So the more inflamed you are, the more stress you have, the less aligned you feel, the less purposeful you are because you're not fulfilled, the more inflammation you create in your body. And inflammation is like rust. Think of chronic inflammation is like the effect. So your organs are like iron, and chronic inflammation is the moisture that causes it to corrode. Chronic inflammation is the humidity in the atmosphere at the coast that causes the iron to rust. So the more inflammation you have, the more wear and tear you're going to have on the organs, the more likely you are to develop chronic disease. And you develop that chronic inflammation because your adrenals can't cope with the cortisol production because you are so chronically stressed. And ultimately, that leads to burnout. So I don't know if I was actually still on the same. I don't know if I've now gone around in a loop and down a rabbit hole because I haven't been looking at my notes. So the more inflammation you have, the more risk you have of chronic disease. So your kidney, again, back to your kidney, it governs and controls your hormones. So when your kidney organ function energy is not good, you can have problems in your whole genitourinary tract. So that is anything from your adrenals, your kidneys, your bladder. If you're a man, your prostate, your penis, your testicles. If you're a woman, your ovaries, your uterus, your cervix, and your vagina. And so menopausal problems in women very often are associated with a depletion of this kidney energy. And part of that is because we stay in situations and we stay doing things because we're keeping on trying to compensate or sort out or soothe this underlying fear that we have. Whereas when we are living in alignment with our spirit, we still have fear. I mean, the fear doesn't go away. I don't want to get old. I don't want to be infirm. I don't want to run out of money. I'm not quite ready to die. I mean, I get that it's going to have to happen, but I don't really want to do it this week or tomorrow or actually even this year or actually in the next 20 years. I don't want that to happen. But that is a small part of what drives me during the course of the day, because I live as much as I can in alignment with what it is that I would love to create. So instead of focusing on staving off illness or old age, I'm focusing on creating health and vibrance and vitality. And you might say to me, Loretta, that sounds like bullshit. That actually just sounds like you're splitting hairs. Yes, I am splitting hairs. And I'll tell you why I'm splitting hairs, because it makes a huge difference. Because your focus creates your reality. So when you go around going, I have no purpose, I don't know what my purpose is, I'm purposeless. Half the time we say that, Because we don't really know what it is to have purpose. And we think a purpose is related to the job that we do. Or because we don't really want to get real with what it is that we would love. Because on some level, none of us believe that we deserve what we would really love. Because we all have these limiting beliefs that are actually driving us. And so those limiting beliefs that we have, we develop them, I've said this a million times, in the first 3 years of our lives. And they're things like, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I'm not capable, I need to be perfect before people can love me. And they're all around. If anyone finds out that this is true, if I don't fix this about myself, then I intrinsically will be unlovable and unloved. And as a consequence of that, that fear drives us most of our lives. And because of that, we don't take the time or the trouble to connect to what is it that we would really love. That's not entirely true, because in some instances of our life, so some parts of our lives seem to work, and they seem to work relatively effortlessly. They're the parts that we're good at, right? We're doing that by chance, actually. We're doing that by not luck. But yes, it's happening or on autopilot, just like some of the shit we're creating is happening on autopilot too. And it boils down to not knowing the truth of who we are in terms of our ego, and the truth of who we are in terms of our limitless spirit, and what that spirit is longing to express in the world. And when we're living aligned with our spirit, this doesn't mean we're not going to get sick. It also doesn't mean we're not going to die young, necessarily. It also doesn't mean that you're going to die rich, all right? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to turn out. But what it does mean is that while you are present, you can extract as much joy and love from every moment as is possible. And the more you are able to do that, the less power external circumstances have to knock you for a 6. And in fact, when something hectic happens, a loved one dies, you lose your money, something happens, right? Of course you'll be knocked for a 6. But the difference between the people who actually bounce back really fast and the people who don't ever bounce back is very often connected to a sense of purpose. So, knowing who you really are and knowing what your spirit is longing to express in the world through you is an essential part of preserving your health overall, but specifically in maintaining the health of your genitourinary tract and your adrenals. So, those of you who have got issues in your genitourinary tract, you might be going, oh, well, I thought I knew what my purpose was. Yes, you may well know what your purpose is, but you might be living your purpose run by your fears, because that's also possible, all right? So in other words, my purpose is awakening people to holistic healing, really. Honestly, that is what it is. Part of my purpose is to take sort of esoteric concepts and to turn them into tangible things that you can apply in your life, right? Practical. That's part of my purpose. It happens to be the job that I do in this life. So that's part of my work, all right? And that is what is making my life purposeful. But I have underlying sabotaging, shall we say, processes that are run by my ego. And so I can be living that purpose, doing this work that I'm doing from a place of not being good enough, which means I push myself too hard. I work too hard. I overextend myself. I say yes when I should be saying no. I do shit I don't want to do. I try and people please. I try and rescue. Now, am I actually being true to my purpose? Sure, I am being true to my purpose. I'm taking esoteric concepts like the energetics of healing and I'm making them practical for you. I am standing in my truth and I'm sharing that and I'm living in alignment. But you know what? I'm running my job through my ego because I'm not allowing myself to actually have my intuition guide me as to what it is the next thing is for me to do. The daily things are for me to do. What do I have to do next? So this live was an intuitive process. I was busy working on something else. I'm doing a podcast tomorrow about menopause. And I was talking about kidneys. It's like, hey, I think this would make a great live. So I've decided that these lives are all going to be about disease and they're all going to be about the energetics and the blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to pick a different one every week. And so this week it was adrenals. And it was, instead of just being, okay, well, let's talk about burnout. Well, you know what? Let's just talk about purpose and the importance of having a purpose so that you can keep your kidney and your adrenals functioning. Because here's the thing, when you've got good functioning kidneys and you've got good functioning adrenals, then you manage your stress better. You become more resilient. Now, please, if you're going through a hard time, this is not like okay, well, listen, pull yourself together. We all go through hard times. We all have shit, right? The difference is your bounce back is better when you are focusing on the big picture, when you are focusing on what makes your heart sing, on what you would love to create in this world, rather than focusing on what is fearful, what is driving you from a place of fear. So you can actually be very purposeful in the world, is the point I was making 5 minutes ago, and then I lost my thread. You can be very purposeful about your purpose, but you can still be doing it from a place of egoic compulsion. So I can, and I've been doing this for years. I think I have actually been, I've been aligned with my purpose for, how old am I now? 53, since I was 18. But because I didn't understand how these compulsions of my ego were running me, I've been running my work. It's like overachieve, work too hard, do too much, don't say no, rescue whoever you need to rescue. It's always your responsibility. Take on more, struggle, it's got to be complicated. All right. So just because you know what your purpose is doesn't mean that you're not running it through your ego reality. I don't know if that made any sense to you. I hope it does. Okay. So you can be purposeful and still have signs and symptoms showing up in your body that are indicating where it is that you need to shine the light of awareness. Not where do you need to do more work? What do you have to fix? How do you have to make yourself better? How can you turn into a better version of you? It's about shining the light of awareness. It's about caring enough about yourself that you're prepared, instead of putting that light out there in the world and looking for what you're looking for out there, shining that light in here and recognizing everything that you need in order to create the life that you would love resides within you. It's not always easy to access, my friends. When life claps you on the side of the head, it is hard. But you know what? We are all powerful creators, and we all create our reality. And our bodies and our health and our wealth and our purpose is part of the reality that we are creating every day. So I hope that this made some sort of sense to you. I'm not sure if it did. I hope it did. I'd love to hear in the comments. You might go, well, this is a lot of bullshit. Didn't follow a word of what you were saying. Or, oh my God, this was amazing. I would prefer, oh my God, this was amazing. But I'm happy to get the feedback of this was a lot of bullshit as well. Okay. I can't remember what next week's is. I think actually next week's might be about dementia. I think we might be going on this theme of aging next week. I'm not too sure. But you'll know next week when I put it up. In fact, I won't be going live on Tuesday next week. It'll be later in the week because I'll be traveling on the Tuesday. Anyway, I digress. Thank you to those of you who are watching this live. If you are watching live, please type live in the comments. If you are watching the replay, please type replay. The more you comment, the more you like, the more you actually even just put an emoji in the comments, the more people will see this post. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me and ask me those questions, and I will try and answer them as best I can. Here comes the sales pitch. If you want an energetic analysis of what is going on with you, if you've got some sort of issue happening in your physiology, if you're, I don't know, you've got some sort of physical diagnosis, or you've got signs and symptoms that are not serving you, and you want to get to the bottom of what they mean for you energetically, then I would love to help you and to point that out, as well as to give you some tips and tools on how to move forward, how to actually start shifting that for yourself. And I do that through a holistic health analysis, which is essentially a consultation. It's an hour. You fill in a little form before we start. I get some info on you. I ask you some questions during the hour, and I basically explain to you what is going on with you energetically and how you can start altering it for yourself. Because part of my mission and purpose is to help people like you to awaken to the reality that you are your own healer, and to help to guide you to accessing that wise healer within you. There is a wise healer that resides in all of us, my friends. And he or she is just waiting for you to come and connect to him or her. So I hope you guys have an amazing Tuesday. Thanks again for being here. Thank you for your comments. And I'll see you next week. It won't be on Tuesday. I don't know what day it'll be, for more shit Loretta knows. If you want to make a holistic health analysis consult, you can just send me a DM, right? So send me a message in Messenger, or you can send me a WhatsApp. I will put the number in the comments.